When Sergeant Ratana began his shift at the Croydon Custody Center on an evening in September 2020, neither he nor his colleagues realized it would be his last. In the early morning hours, a prisoner was brought in, handcuffed, and searched by officers during his arrest. That man was Louis de Zoysa, and unbeknown to the police, he was armed. In the events that followed, de Zoysa somehow managed to smuggle a weapon into the custody center and shoot Sergeant Ratana dead. The married father of one had been 3 months away from retirement. The subsequent trial attempted to understand why this tragedy occurred, and the police force was left with the question of how such a thing could happen. On November 4, 2020, Matt Ratana was laid to rest. The memorial for the 54-year-old was held at a chapel and attended in person by a limited number of his family, friends, and close colleagues to coronavirus restrictions. Moving tributes were paid to the long-serving policeman at the service in Shoreham-by-Sea, West Sussex. The Metropolitan police veteran had been just 3 months from retirement when he was killed in the line of duty. Along with the many flowers, there was a traditional Maori fighting weapon called a mir, which the tribe chief would hand down to his son, sent as a sign of respect from New Zealand police, where he worked from 2003 to 2008. After his service, Ratana was given a haka send-off, the traditional Maori war dance, performed by his friends. It was a fitting farewell for such a much-loved colleague, born to a Maori father, and a mother who had emigrated from Scotland. Matt Ratana, known as Matt, grew up watching in New Zealand. Although the family was not wealthy, the young Matt did well at school, excelling at sports, and became a prefect. Along with his younger brother James, he liked to watch British TV shows, such as sporting events like the FA Cup Final and the 1970s crime series The Professionals. On the evening of September 25, 2020, a prisoner was brought into the Croydon Custody Center, where Sergeant Ratana was in charge. The man, 23-year-old Louis de Zoysa, had been arrested in the early morning hours by PC's Davy and still, handcuffed, de Zoysa was transported to the center in the back of a police van. Once in the custody suite, Sergeant Ratana took control of the situation. He was told de Zoysa had been apprehended in possession of bullets, which were found in his breast pocket. A metal detector was handed to PC Davy, one of the arresting officers, and Ratana told him, "Just wand him down, but don't take the cuffs off." At this moment, de Zoysa became uncompliant and started muttering to PC's Davy and still, please leave," as he was pulled to his feet by PC Davy. De Zoysa brought his still cuffed hands from behind his back and shot Sergeant Ratana. The bullet pierced his heart. A second shot struck the custody sergeant in the leg, while a third hit the cell wall. A struggle followed, as PC's Davy and still leapt on de Zoysa to restrain him. During that moment, a fourth shot was fired, hitting de Zoysa in the neck. Paramedics responded immediately, but were unable to save the life of Matt Ratana. The self-inflicted injuries caused Louis de Zoysa to suffer a stroke. Surgeons had to remove a section of his skull to relieve pressure on his brain. For months he was unable to walk or talk. Eventually, he made a partial recovery, but mostly uses a wheelchair, while his speech is restricted to using single words or short phrases. Despite his debilitating injuries, the Crown Prosecution Service decided he was well enough to be charged with murder. The lawyers acting for the defendant tried to argue he was unfit to be tried, as he could no longer communicate properly, but the judge disagreed. The trial began on June 6, 2023, and Louis de Zoysa denied the charge of murder against Matt Ratana. The court heard the events that led to Louis de Zoysa's arrest. At around midnight on September 25, 2020, he left the flat he had rented on a farm on the edge of London. He carrying an antique Colt revolver, concealed in a holster and hidden under his left arm. This type of weapon was legal at the time, because of the obsolete .41 caliber bullets it takes. However, de Zoysa had made his ammunition. In each of the 6 chambers of the revolver, he had placed a bullet. De Zoysa was also carrying 7 more bullets in a black pouch he kept in his breast pocket. Shortly after 1:30 a.m., to police officers, PC Rich Davey and PC Samantha Still observed Louis de Zoysa walking along London Road in Norbury, in South London. He was carrying with him a small brown duffel bag, and the officers decided to conduct a stop and search. Realizing he was going to be searched, de Zoysa informed the officers he owned 3 grams of cannabis. He was placed in handcuffs, and during a search, PC Davey found the bullets. Upon this discovery, further searches were carried out. The 2 officers checked de Zoysa's bag, as well as his waistband. His legs were then frisked, but somehow they missed the gun in the holster under his arm. The officers did not have a metal detector with them in the police car that could be used to locate hidden weapons, such as knives and guns. Now under arrest, Louis de Zoysa was taken to the Croydon Custody Center in the back of a police van. Detectives believe it was during this journey that de Zoysa managed to move the gun from the holster to his hands, while still cuffed behind his back. There was no metal detector at the entrance to the custody area. Exactly how he had managed to move the gun was explained. The court was told de Zoysa had hypermobility, which gave him unusual flexibility in his joints, and it was this ability that allowed him at some point during the journey to the custody center to move the gun from the holster into his hands and keep it concealed behind his back. Once de Zoysa was in the custody suite, Sergeant Ratana arrived on the scene and assumed charge over the prisoner. As a result of the bullets that were found on his person, Ratana told de Zoysa, "So, you're probably going to need a further search." It was then that he fired the fatal shots that killed Sergeant Ratana. The court heard de Zoysa was diagnosed at the age of 13 with autistic spectrum disorder but had done well at school and had learned how to shoot in the Army Cadets. He did, however, have a somewhat strained relationship with his father. This was something that was put forward as a possible motive for the events of September 25, 2020. Prosecutor Jocelyn Ledward told the court, his motives for carrying the firearm and discharging it at Ratana remained somewhat unclear. At the time of the murder and its immediate aftermath, it was not clear to detectives why he was walking the streets near his parents' house with a loaded gun during the early morning hours. Aside from his interest in firearms, ammunition, and extreme violence, one theory is that he was there to confront his Sri Lanka-born father, Chana de Zoysa, who has convictions for domestic violence and allegedly carried out a reign of terror against his son. The two had a history of volatile relations, and he was no longer living at the family home. His father and mother, Elizabeth, were portrayed as Roman Catholic churchgoers who were keen members of the community and enthusiastic cyclists. Together they ran cycling groups for children and won a Green Household Award in 2007 for their ecological awareness. A former electronics engineer, Chana de Zoysa worked as a yoga teacher who kept bees and played badminton. He was known locally as Dr. Bike for his free bicycle repair clinics, and boasted that he left children safe and happy through his publicly funded cycling academy. Outwardly, they appeared to be a happy and accomplished family, but behind closed doors, it was a very different matter. Louis de Zoysa painted a different portrait of his father. He described him as a criminal and former drug dealer who had been hooked on cocaine for a decade. When questioned by the prosecution, the defendant, now brain damaged, answered questions with one-word answers or through the use of a whiteboard to communicate. When asked about his father, de Zoysa became animated, describing how he had been beaten for even the most trivial things. He went on to explain the crazy violence at the dinner table and how his father once pulled a knife on another family member. De Zoysa described an incident where his father was arrested for assault after hitting his son so hard with a wooden slat that he broke his foot. When officers arrived, they were told how Chana had previously attacked his son while on holiday in Sri Lanka leaving him requiring stitches to the back of his head. Eventually, social workers intervened for a decade to monitor the children's safety, and Elizabeth de Zoysa took out a restraining order on her husband, cutting him off financially before they later reconciled. Over subsequent years, police were routinely called to the family home due to calls of domestic violence. As the young de Zoysa grew older, he started to fight back. He admitted to the court he once battered his father with a metal rod, setting the bedroom carpet on fire, fighting with him, and kicking him off his bike in 2019. When asked how he felt about the violence in the household, Louis de Zoysa replied, "Brewing." His father was not present in court to hear the charges against his son, who suffered bullying during his time in school from classmates who threw chains at him. A higher-achieving student who gained straight A's in his A-levels at the Catholic John Fisher Secondary School, de Zoysa was known as an unsporty, very clever maths geek who struggled to make any friends. One clinical psychologist stated that de Zoysa's difficulties with social interaction, along with his restricted interests and the rigidity in his way of thinking, indicated he might be diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. However, others, in particular his fellow former students, describe a more arrogant young man. In his school yearbook, "Do what you must, for I have already won," former pupils recall a deeply troubled young man with an interest in weapons, something that led to him being disciplined for bringing an air gun onto school grounds. One of his classmates jokingly wrote in the official Lever's book, he was good with weapons. De Zoysa boasted to others that he often surfed the dark web, and one of his friends remembered him designing weapons on school computers. He used to brag about he could see hitmen and guns for sale, and used to watch murder videos, ISIS videos, and things like that. You've got kids playing outside or doing homework, and he was in the corner watching these videos. When studying mechanical engineering at the University College London in 2017, he was pictured smiling while brandishing a medieval broadsword. A year later in 2018, and 2 years before the murder of Matt Ratana, de Zoysa was referred to the Home Office Prevent De-Radicalization program after fears arose that he had extreme Islamist and right-wing views. However, he was assessed as posing no threat. A year into his studies, he dropped out but was able to hold down a job as a data analyst at Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in Croydon. There he was praised by colleagues for his ability to write computer code from scratch. Unbeknown to others, de Zoysa had begun to smoke increasing amounts of cannabis. His typical day would often be described as weed, oven, gym, food, bath. In a bid to escape his father's increasingly hostile and violent nature, and looking for his solitude, de Zoysa moved out of the family home and lived 8 miles away on a farm in Banstead, Surrey. Now away from his overbearing father, he secretly purchased an antique revolver from an online auction. He never told police what his intentions were the night he was arrested, but it was clear he intended to take revenge on his father. The morning after the shooting, the de Zoysa's £600,000 home was searched by detectives as the couple sat handcuffed on the sofa. To them, it was clear who was at fault. They claimed the police had failed their son. They believe it was a series of blunders by police that led to the death of Sergeant Matt Ratana, and that his family should seek compensation from the police force rather than from their son. During his time in hospital after the shooting, officers seized a drawing made by de Zoysa of 2 officers and gun. He had scrawled the drawing while recovering after shooting himself in the neck. His mother Elizabeth de Zoysa said, "He drew a picture of what happened because he's been very anxious about the police presence, and police took it. He showed it to his consultant," she said. Louis hasn't been able to sleep very well, and the consultant speculated it was because of the police presence this triggered something. She went on to accuse the police of controlling his visits from family, his letters, and the calls they made to their son in prison. She went on to say her son should have been accompanied by an appropriate adult at the custody center. adding, "I'm quite concerned that the IOPC hasn't followed up on how the police have conducted the investigation." At this trial, de Zoysa told the jury he was sad the officer died. He told the court he had not meant to kill Sergeant Ratana, nor cause him any serious harm. He claimed diminished responsibility. However, the jury did not believe this. On June 23, 2023, Louis de Zoysa was found guilty of murdering Met Police Sergeant Matt Ratana by shooting him in the chest. The jury at Northampton Crown Court ruled he acted deliberately. He is scheduled to be sentenced on July 27th.
Okay, listen to me. My name's Matt, I'm the custody officer, right? I'm in charge. I'm not involved in the investigation. You've been arrested on suspicion of possession of bullets, ammunition and possession of intent to supply.
Class B.
Class B, anything else?
No, that's it.
Alright, your detention's not been authorised yet, but I can authorise a search of you under section 54 of PACE. Stand up. Mate, you're good enough to...
Matt, you alright?
I want to take them!
Matt,
Right, I'll blow it!
Matt, come away,
Stop it!
Exactly. Get him on the ground! Get him on the ground!
On balance, I accept that you are likely to find prison more difficult than a neurotypical prisoner. I take that into account. Your injuries. After shooting Sergeant Matt Ratana twice, you fired 2 more shots. One hit the wall of the cell, mercifully missing the 2 officers who were bravely restraining you. The 4th hit you in the neck. This resulted in bleeding and a blood clot, which travelled to your brain and has caused some damage. It has also resulted in physical problems. It means you now use a wheelchair, and you have real problems with your communication, often using a whiteboard to help you communicate. It is entirely due to your deliberate and voluntary actions that you have those injuries. But I have regard to the impact of imprisonment on you in the light of the totality of your injuries. I am satisfied that adequate treatment can be provided in custody. Even so, I recognise that custody is likely to be more difficult, both because of your injuries and because of your autism. That is a significant factor to consider when deciding whether to impose a whole life order. The aggravating effect of your use of a gun and the planning and premeditation outweigh the mitigating effects of your personal mitigation, including the impact of custody. There is therefore no justification to depart from the starting point of a whole life order. That is what Parliament has decided should normally apply as a starting point to the murder of a police officer in the execution of their duty. The seriousness of the offence means that a minimum term order is not justified. A whole life order must be imposed. Louis de Zoysa, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. I impose a whole life order. That means you will remain in custody for the rest of your life. You may now be taken from the dock.